Welcome to the podcast about on-campus interviews at law school. Today's segment will focus on choosing the law firms with which you would like to interview during your on-campus session, as well as preparing for the on-campus interview. My name is Miguel Eaton. I'm a graduate of Duke Law School in 2006. I'm a partner at Jones Day in the Washington office. I co-lead the Employee Benefits and Executive Compensation practice, and I've done OCI at Duke and other places for several years, and have been on the recruiting committee for several years. Helping me today are two colleagues who are a bit closer to the law school experience, Jenny Plagman and Stephen Scott. So Jenny, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, guys. This is Jenny Plagman. I am, a ninth year associate at Jones Day. I did my summer here. I went to the University of Notre Dame for undergraduate and then the University of Chicago Law School for law school. Happy to be here.
Stephen?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Stephen Scott. I'm originally from Shepherdtown, West Virginia, but now in Pittsburgh, PA. I'm a second year associate at Jones Day in the Business and Tort Litigation Group out of the Pittsburgh office. And my undergrad as well as my law school education were both at West Virginia University. So a proud mountaineer through and through.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I remember way back in 2004, as I was going through the on-campus process, and it occurred much later than after classes had started, but you had to come up with your list of law firms that you wanted to choose from and interview with. And I think like most schools, you sort of had your pick. Duke was not a place that the employers or the law firms could decide whether to interview you. So you had a pretty broad list. And coming up with that list, I remember, was pretty daunting. Jenny, how did you come up with the list of firms that you wanted to meet with, at least in the on-campus process?
So, in the on campus process, I knew that I wanted to be in Chicago. I had picked my law school based on was it good enough to get me to Chicago or was it in Chicago? And luckily, it was both. So, I knew I wanted to pick a firm that was strong in Chicago. And I didn't want to be at a big law firm it had its satellite office type in Chicago. I kind of wanted to be at the center of everything. And another thing that really drew me to Jones Day particularly was that I wanted to be in a big enough office where the firm did a lot of different work, but also I wasn't just another associate with a number on my back going through the motions. I wanted to kind of be able to be Jenny Plagman and for people to know me. And so those were the two things I was really focused on, as well as looking to see, were there any diverse associates there? Was I going to be the only one? Because if so, that would be a problem for me. But luckily for Jones Day, there were plenty. So.
And Jenny, did Jones Day sort of come on your radar because you were looking at firms with that criteria and you either saw it on either NALP guidelines or something online? How did you do your research?
Yeah, it was NALP guidelines. I did a lot of creeping on the website and I kind of sent out feelers. My law school had a really good network of people that you could kind of reach out to that had gone to the law school before that were in big law, and particularly on Balsa that I could reach out to. And so I was lucky enough to have a number of candid conversations with people just about what's the firm like? What's the vibe like? Is it completely whitewashed or is there a little bit of color in there? Because that was important to me.
Yeah. And do you have any memory of approximately how many firms you interviewed with during your OCI?
Oh man, Miguel, it's been a while here. I know I had 2.5 full days. I want to say I maybe interviewed with 15 or 16 firms. When I was going through, it was, what was it? 2012. We were interviewing in the fall of 2012. So the law field was only 4 years out from that big crash 2008. And so law firms were saying we're going to have small summer classes, but they were going to have them. And so I wanted to cast a wide net while still making sure that all of the firms that I looked at met the criteria I was looking for. But funny enough, I actually had gone to the Cook County Bar Administration. They had their own job fair that happened 2 weeks before our OCI. And that's where I met Jones Day and some other firms that were at the top of my list. And so I was a little bit more relaxed going into OCI because I got a call back from Jones Day as I was going into OCI. So I was like, all right, like I'm feeling good. I got a couple callbacks. I still went through with 15 or 16 other firms. I wanted to be somewhere where I'd be there long term. And so it's really like interviewing for the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life. So I was taking it pretty seriously.
Got it. It sounds like it worked out. So
It sure did.
Stephen, I'll ask you sort of similarly, what were you looking for as you were coming up with your list of firms that you wanted to at least have an initial interview with?
Yeah, so to be honest, at first, I just didn't know. I really did not have like a solid topic. I didn't know what are the things to look after. For context, I'm a first generation college student. So that also meant I was a first generation law school student. And I am the only lawyer in my family. And so trying to get a grasp of what does it mean to be a judge like those on the TV that I watched growing up was something I just had no idea what that entailed, or even in fact, if that's what I wanted to do. I just always knew that I had made a promise to my mom when I was younger that I wanted to be a lawyer one day, specifically like a judge on TV. And I just knew I was going to make that happen. Thankfully, my mentor from Leadership Council on Legal Diversity helped me really sit down and like actually write out what are the things that I was interested in, things I was looking for. And I think it just boiled down to three things. One, why litigation, general like courtroom exposure. Second, how broad the topics were that were covered at the law firm. And third, whether just looking and reading into some of the people that I could be working with or knew about, could I see myself essentially grabbing pizza with them at 3 o'clock in the morning from what I heard of late nights. And so that was my three items on my list. Granted, even that still had a wide net of law firms. And so I ultimately end up doing kind of like a large scale approach to interview with as many firms as possible in the OCI process. But also, I had my mentor encourage me to look beyond West Virginia. Before I started at the firm, 20, 26, 27 years of my life in the state. So I had not seen what else was out there. And so that allowed me to put Jones Day on my radar, as well as the three topics I was interested in. So I took a very broad approach trying to figure it out along the way.
I've got it. And that makes total sense. One of the points I want to stress to the first years as you're going to go into your summer and then think about the list you want to put together, you should cast a wide net. Don't be afraid that you're listing too many firms because it is really sort of plowing new ground for you. Like Stephen said, there's a lot of people with their first generation college or first generation lawyers. I had spent 7 years in the Marine Corps before going to law school, and I always figured going to be a lawyer, going to be a prosecutor, and that's what lawyers did. And then I remember showing up for law school, and this was back in the time when on-campus interviews started sort of after classes had started. So I saw these guys walking around in suits and law students, and I said, who are these guys? And they said, those are 2Ls, and they have on-campus interviews for the firms. So they'll just step out of class whenever they have an interview, and started finding out about the firms. But all the names sounded completely the same to me. Had no idea what a sort of 2,000 plus lawyer firm was compared to a 500 lawyer firm. So when I started looking at what my criteria were for at least listing them for OCI, I had a few. One was I wanted them to be in the DC area because my wife and I are both from DC, so that was pretty easy. But geography is important. Second, I wanted strong litigation practice. And that's actually not that hard to find in DC. I always tell law students, if you want to be a transactional lawyer, you have to do sort of an extra layer of diligence if you're going to go to someplace like DC. Like New York, you're going to find every big firm in New York does M&A. But that's not really the case with even big firms in DC, even firms that have a big presence in DC. If you want to do transactional work, you have to do that extra layer of diligence because they may have a really small M&A practice. Their litigation practice could be really large, and they're not going to write that in different size fonts on the webpage. So you got to really look into it. And then third, like Jenny, I didn't want the office to be an outpost. So if it's a 300 lawyer office in New York, but they've only got 20 lawyers in DC, I didn't really want that to be a place that I started my career, just because I feel like those kind of small outpost offices weren't going to have the kind of cachet to advocate for you when it came time for partner promotions. And then really the last thing I looked at was diversity. I was not going to list any firm in DC that did not have at least one Black or Latino partner. And, you could tell that in the NALP guidelines. And my thinking on that was in 2005, I shouldn't have to be sort of Jackie Robinson in Washington, DC at any law firm. So that's sort of what I was looking for in terms of who I was going to list for OCI. And I ended up with about 21 or 22 firms that I did on-campus interviews with. So why don't we pivot to sort of the second topic I wanted to talk about was preparing for the OCI interview. We all experienced this. You had several in a day, sometimes 3, 4, or 5. And Jenny, I just wanted to ask you sort of what your preparation process looked like as you went into the OCI interviews.
Yeah, so I would first, they would let you know who you're interviewing with. So I do a little due diligence on my interviewers to figure out what's like one thing that I could say to them at any point during the interview that would be not like law school or business related, but that would be able to show my personality. Going into it, I thought there's a lot of us. We're all doing the same thing. These people are seeing the same type of people in and out, day in and day out, back to back segments for 20 minutes each. How do I stand out, and not just based on what I look like, but my personality. How do they get a flavor of who I am? So that was one thing I focused on, of a way to figure out how to connect with the person while also let them get to see who I am. And then on top of that, you do your general research about, okay, what's the firm? What does the firm do for the summer? Is there anything unique that they do? And then really it was coming up with a list of questions that can't be answered by looking at the website. What kind of work will I get? Do you encourage us to try different groups? I was interested in litigation, so one of my questions was always kind of like, I can see from the website there are a number of different types of litigation. What are the stronger, bigger groups in Chicago? What is kind of the vibe there? Because I was looking for a place, kind of like Stephen mentioned, in addition to all the criteria, once I'm starting to meet these people, who are the people that I would want to just grab a drink with, that I'd want to be stuck in a conference room at 2 a.m. with, getting ready for trial? Did they give me those kind of good vibes, or were they really stiff? Or did they have really sharp elbows? I am competitive mostly with myself, but I didn't want to go to a place that was just going to be, you've got to jockey your way to the top and you don't have friends because you're not here to make friends. Everywhere I'm going, I'm trying to make friends. And so that was kind of what I did to prepare for my OCI interviews.
Great. And I'd have to ask, so can you remember any of the questions that you had for for any of the folks, or some of the more interesting answers that you got?
Oh boy. One of my kind of go-to questions was, when I knew I was talking to somebody in litigation, was what's kind of the craziest thing that's happened to you in a case, or the craziest kind of deposition or fact that you've come across. And I'll never forget this. One person told me about how they were preparing to take this plaintiff's deposition, and they could just tell that the plaintiff had not been honest. And they were doing some research on the plaintiff and found that he had written a book about how to lie, and it was available on Amazon. And so he bought it and read it. And in the book, he talked about, how to lie, how to like lie to make money, and then had this weird section about like dreams that he would have about his mother. And so this lawyer is telling me about this, and he starts asking the plaintiff about the book and the stuff that he said in the book in the deposition. And he said that as he was going through and the guy was answering his questions, he said opposing counsel just kind of slowly kept moving his chair further and further away from his client. And then he was like, let's take a break. And then they like started talking about settlement right then and there, because it was like, you just said you're a liar in a book that you're selling on Amazon. So what are we doing here?
That's fantastic. And I'm sure the lawyer appreciated telling that story in the interview too. And I'm sure they remembered you.
Yep.
Question. Stephen, how about you? How did you prep for sometimes what would be 3 or 4 or 5 interviews in a day?
Yeah, so I echo what Jenny said about research. And I think I'd like to add too, I think there's research you do where you're trying to have the background information you need to be successful in the interview, such as like, who is this person that I'm interviewing with, like what the firm is like. And then I think you have your research about who is this person to the community. And it's really easy to put someone's name into whatever search engine and type in nonprofit or community service. and see what comes back, because that will give you further insight. You get a chance to talk to them more about what it means to give back. And I know for me, that was something that's really important. That I knew that client service was important, that providing great results in the courtroom was important, but also what it meant for me as a lawyer to allow others who looked like me to have the similar chances as me, or to really help the community that I'm in to thrive. Also, in addition to research, I actually had to get some suits. Like, I just did not have a lot of like a attire to choose from. And so I remember thinking about, do I wear this like light blue jacket combo that I have, or should I go and get like a navy, like a darker navy? Should I wear my brown suit? Is that controversial, or should I wear my black suit? So I really spent some time also figuring out like what is standard, especially with tie selection. I know that seems like something that shouldn't be stressful, but when you have certain preconceived notions of what, like, for example, I didn't know what big law meant. And so I was like, okay, can someone tell me what this means? And then further, what does it mean to be a lawyer in big law? And so I was just trying to essentially fit the part. Now, granted, I know at the time that's not what I should have done, but I think that when you realize that you could be the lone dot on the domino, you do experience some pressure to at least not cause alarm by your presence. And so I was trying to do the minimum to make sure I wasn't standing out, even more so than what I would already be standing out. So those are the two main things for me.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I can appreciate the sort of angst and the really basic parts of what do I wear? It is funny, as someone who goes back for OCI now, it is more of a uniform. All the guys are in dark suits, usually blue, white shirt. The women, there's a little more variation, but it is pretty conservative. So it is funny to sort of see them taking part really in the basics of the attire, which is kind of what they're supposed to do. And I know what all the career service offices tell them to do. For me, I remember researching the firms, you did the basic research. And one of the things I wanted to figure out was, who are their peers? It was kind of hard to tell whether, like I said, all the firm names sounded the same, but there are different tiers and peers. And one of the questions I asked was, who do you consider your peer firms to be? And it was interesting to hear those names and sort of start to group and hear the lawyers themselves group who they thought they were amongst. But, we'll talk more about the actual interview in another segment, but I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on how you went about preparing. And I really appreciate all of the insights that you guys shared today.
Thanks so much, Miguel. I look forward to the next session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miguel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Jones Day Talks. Comments heard on Jones Day Talks should not be construed as legal advice regarding any specific facts or circumstances. The opinions expressed on Jones Day Talks are those of lawyers appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the firm. For more information, please visit jonesday.com.